Okie doke. And you're live, it says. Live from my basement to
Live.
your home. And
I was going to say, are we going to make some kind of crack of live from, I don't know where we are anymore. It's not Saturday Night Live. It's the boring show.
That's right. It's not Saturday Night Live. Let's say hello to some people sitting in our chat room tonight. We got Rex Waldy, who was the first one in tonight. Stephen Friend, Lip Service Crew, The Scarecrow, Mark L. Baker, our good friend here in Calgary, Pierre from Edmonton, and we have Jerry Knapp from 3D Printing and Painting, also in our chat tonight. Reposted on Facebook group, he says. So he reposted. You guys know, there's Mark Thibodeau. Hello from Ontario. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And David Sell.
One Raz. Hey, everybody. Tony Broadus, Trevor Richard. Oh, my gosh. Hey, happy Saturday, guys. Glad to see you're all joining us here. It's kind of nice to see everyone right off the bat, you know. I left a barbecue, so I just chowed down a burger and just ran in here. So good to see it wasn't all for waste. I appreciate it.
Yeah, there you go. There's RT. We've got one Raz and Antenebsic.
No, it's Antennas BC.
Oh, Antennas BC. Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You guys know that we've been playing around with rockets lately, and we've talked a lot about that in the past. And I want to kind of do a quick little comparison tonight and show you guys really quickly of what we were using as a motor for our rockets on our first launch video. This is the size of it. So this is a C65, an Estes style, and there's the igniter for it. Something really small. You can see that there, maybe. Now
it's about the size of a thermistor, basically.
Yeah. Now this one I'm going to show you. Don't get freaked out, but this is the one we're going to be using on our new rocket launch at the end of August. So this is a F-25-4. So this has 4 times as much power as the C engine I just showed you. So this will actually lift 5.6 pounds into the air.
Jeez.
And this is the igniter.
We've been prepping a lot for this next launch, so.
Yeah, this is the igniter. That's what sets it off. So.
Yeah, is that a 18 gauge or 16 gauge? What does that
no,
look
this
like
looks like, Jesus, almost looks like 28 gauge.
Okay, maybe it was.
It's thin core, or it's single core wire. So.
Okay. So
yeah.
It's solid core. Wow.
Hey, there's Peter Reynolds and Hockey. Tonight we have no questions. So thanks for showing up. I just went blank.
Yes. Perfect timing. Welcome to the Brian Show. This is what happens when you send us no questions. Prepare for boredom.
There we go.
No,
no,
Annie's got. Welcome to Technical Ridden Land. You may have noticed my angle's a little bit different because I built a new desk and have a whole new camera setup I'm working on here right now. But the teleprompter screen, the one I usually use, sits right here in front of me, and it's not mounted right now. So I am looking off to Richard and us on the side, and our chat on the other side, if you see me looking everywhere.
So my chat's right here, and I'm looking at Brian over here. So, yeah.
That's why he doesn't look at me. It's,
yeah.
Amongst many other reasons.
You're a handsome fella. Hey, there's Peter Sandy. And what do you think about the Ender 3 V2 Antennas BC? What do I think about
opinion to be determined?
Yes, my opinion is to be determined on that. One showed up here on my doorstep yesterday. Day before yesterday, actually Thursday it showed up. I haven't even opened the box yet. It's going to go into the printer room and into testing, and I will let you guys know. Do you guys want to see a full unboxing and assembly video on that? Let me know. Put your comments here in the chat tonight or down in the comments below. Hit that like button if you get something out of tonight. I want to let you know that we do have Super Chat turned on, so if you've got a question and you would like us to answer it and get to the front of the line with your question, you can always use that. That'll get our attention. Peter Reynolds, how do you
If you
convert
manage to
a
buy water
UFP file to a G-code file? How do you convert a UFP file to a G-code file, Brian?
I haven't even come across a UFP file yet, so bear
Me
with me
either.
one moment. I'm going to take a look at this. I'm going to get
All
some
right.
little bit of education here.
Brian is going to give you some education.
Okay, so Cura 3.5.1, people saved as UFP. I'm going to guess it has something to do with universal profiling because they did get away from the old file types. Using the 3E profile, the default file type is G-code. The UFP file type can be selected from the file type for the 3E. I don't know which printer that is, but it sounds like there's a configuration setting. It's basically a zip archive with the G-code and a preview image attached so we can show on the S5 touchscreen. Oh, so if that's the case, if you have a UFP file, use a program like 7-Zip to extract it as if it's a zip file, and you should show the G-code in there. It looks like they're trying to combine what goes on with the resin machines, where you see a preview of your print on the actual resin printer. So I haven't tried it yet. Let me know if that works for you, though.
There you go. Jerry says he's waiting to get one soon to review. Hopefully you get yours. I didn't even know mine was coming. They reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to have a look at it. I said yes, and then I never heard anything from them, so I assumed it wasn't coming, and then it showed up on my doorstep.
I'm guessing they probably sent it from China, and we've had major shipping delays everywhere.
Yeah.
I gave Richard actually some tea nuts the other day that I ordered. Hello, sir. I gave Richard some tea nuts. I ordered those March 30th, and they showed up yesterday. So it's a very slow process. My flex beds that I've been talking with you guys about reviewing, if you saw my preview image, 2-3 months ago on the Facebook group, I finally got my final set of them. So it's been painful getting stuff in from China. So I'm curious if yours was shipped direct by them.
Yeah, it was shipped. I looked at the shipping labels and the waybill, and it was shipped directly from them. But here's what kills me is I ordered FEP film from them like months ago when I did the review on the LDR-002 or LD-002R resin printer.
Yeah.
And I still haven't gotten those yet. So...
yeah, it'll take time. They will show up. We're all suffering.
Yeah. Let's see. What do we got going on here? Eric B says, is there a point to trying to recycle my scrap PLA? No.
Recycle it for extrusion? No. But if you want to recycle it for something else, absolutely.
Yeah, you can do that.
If you can find a way to melt it down and make some coasters or something, you don't have to throw it out. PLA being as soft as it is, you could probably melt it in an oven at a fairly low temp if you had a mold or something. I just haven't done enough casting lately to have something to try that with. But otherwise, yeah, there's a couple different machines I've seen coming down in price that I'd like to try at some point for remanufacturing filament. But when we last looked at it, I think 8 months ago, we were talking about the filament extrusion machines. They just simply, if you managed to produce a viable roll of filament, your tolerances were so far out, it wouldn't really be usable in any practical application. Otherwise, pretty much everybody and their dog in the US right now especially would be manufacturing their own filament.
Yeah.
Because that's the only difference is recycling PLA, you grind it up or you buy the pellets, right?
Well, even if you grind it up, if you recycle it, you still have to put a certain amount of fresh pellets in with it. Just so you guys are aware, if you're going to recycle it, make it into your own filament, make your own filament maker or whatever you're going to do. I would, if you're going to do that, first of all, look at CNC Kitchen. The young man over there, what is it, Stefan, made a filament maker machine for his scrap PLA, and it does take quite some time, and it's an interesting piece of engineering. But check out CNC Kitchen and Stefan for that if you guys are interested in doing that. High Tech Redneck, hello. Corey Mack, hello. Betty Boop 45, hello. And Dominic Versetto, make guitar picks with scrap PLA. Hey, that's a great idea.
I've seen a few people do that. Again, I just haven't made a mold for that sort of thing. I have a couple different projects to melt it down, but really I haven't had a lot of scrap PLA that wasn't a giant piece that would have been a lot of effort to melt it down. Trevor Rickard is asking, what's the best type of paint to paint on PLA?
Well, I will tell you, because I do a lot of it, use acrylics. You do want to prime the plastic first. So you want to get a decent primer. I use the Krylon primer or the Rust-Oleum primers. They're both very good for plastic. Rust-Oleum's a little more in tune with plastic because it's designed to stick to plastic as well as a bunch of other things. But do give your plastic a tooth first. So take a piece of sandpaper and go over it. You don't have to go over it like super heavy. Just do a light sanding so it's got a little bit of a tooth, and then that paint will grab right in there. And then you just paint it with acrylics. And then I use an acrylic a clear spray to go over top just to protect the paint, and they last quite a long time. That's what Superman's done in acrylic paints.
Yeah, that model looks fantastic. Actually, bring it over. We haven't seen him in a while. I know.
Actually, you missed it last week. We saw.
Oh, did we? Okay, yeah. That's my fault. That's what happens when the scheduled days up. Yeah.
So he's still not done, of course, but this is all acrylic paint on there.
Is that the basics one that we were talking about previous times?
Yep, the Liquitex Basics, my own blend. Liquitex. And if you look real close, you can see he's got some modeling in the skin and, some pock marks. And he's not done, but of course, acrylics are water-based, so they clean up with water very well. So if you are looking to paint your 3D prints, acrylics is my choice.
Eric B was saying, did you do that? It looks fantastic. Yeah, Richard's it's not been a fast process on that one, but that's all him.
whenever I need something to be stress relieving and I just want to come down and paint, I'll grab them and I'll do a little bit more work on them.
Andrew Hart's asking, how to stop my infill getting torn up. Rest of the print is good quality, except where model is supported could improve. Yeah, infill is always a fun one to play with. My first recommendation, if you want to slow it right down, is use an infill like gyroid, because all the changes and curves will naturally slow down, and see if that helps binding it a little bit. I'd have to see a photo. If you get a chance, you can maybe email it to us for the next week, or if you want to post it on the Facebook group, we can take a look and see if there's a particular Cura setting that's causing your infill defects.
Yeah,
and Tennis Oh, sorry, I'm trying to catch up on the questions. You guys are asking all the good questions tonight.
Yeah. Yes, that is from Megs.
Yes. Scarecrow asks, I just added a new dual extruder because the plastic one finally broke. It works great. The only thing is the PFTE fitting won't fit due to the Z screw. How can I resolve that?
What printer are you on?
Yes. I'm going to guess it's on a CR-10 or equivalent. Yeah, you got the dual gear one that has a Bowden connector on both sides. The simple answer is it doesn't fit, but you also don't need that second Bowden. If you want to, take a little piece of Bowden tube, cut it off, and just slide it down into place. You can use a little glue if you want to, or if you just want to use a little piece of tape just to help glide it in. But worst case, all it does is catch on the threads of that port. It won't grind through like the original plastic one. Yeah, up here, that dual gear one, they don't sell it on Amazon with Bowden connectors on both sides, but if you buy them from AliExpress, they do come with both.
There you go. Richard, have you ever done any stencils on your prints? No, I haven't yet, but we have some prints coming up that we're going to try doing some stenciling on, and we'll be using a proper masking film to do it, because Brian's got the Cricut. You can see he's got
Cricut Maker, yeah.
Cricut Maker, so he can cut out the stencils and then I can put them on and paint over top of them. But I have used stencils in the past when I've done other models that have had to have multicolors. I've used stencils before.
Just bear in mind, it binds. It's more based off the adhesive than it is the actual materials. So these ones I've got a vinyl. They're labeled as permanent, but they're not heat transfer based. The the more rough texture the surface it can apply on, the better grip you're going to have.
Yeah.
But if you also have very visible layer lines, you're going to have binding issues unless you run a comb along it and you pass those defects on to your vinyl layers. So it's all about prepping the surface. But in my opinion, so far, I haven't seen a need to prime it or something before attaching it. I think these will bind to PLA just fine.
Yeah. What was the other question? Oh, it's a bit tough trying to stencil a curved surface. Any tips? Yes, when you're putting down your stencil, make sure that you get all the air out of that stencil on a curved surface. If you have to, like if you're doing compound curves, you're going to have to cut the stencil and have it overlap in certain areas. Like let's say you're doing a helmet like the Star Wars helmet in the background that you see there, the Stormtrooper helmet. If you were going to put the Imperial symbol up on the helmet, it's a compound curve. So when you're laying down that stencil, you do have to cut it a little bit just to kind of overlap it, and then it should lay down flat enough for you to get your airbrush and paint over top, and then just pull that mask right up. It should be fine.
There might even be a software package out there if you know the bow, but I haven't
seen one.
Looked for anything. Most of the stencils I've been doing are small size, and they go on flat or curved surfaces. So if I try that, find something, a trick, I will share it with you guys.
There you go. Pure Life RC01TJ says, Brian, can you tell me what I have to do to install Cura on Windows 10 64-bit? Hit the install button.
Go to ultimatemaker.com/Cura and hit install now. What issues are you having with the install will be my question, because it really is just that. Go to the website, download the latest version available, hit run, and in my experience, if you have the time, go back into your control panel and uninstall all the old Cura versions, because even Windows 10, I've had Cura 4.6.1 installed on this computer for months, and I've been using it every time, and yet every time when I type Cura, it defaults to Cura 4.5 and launches the wrong one. So yeah, it doesn't clean up old versions, and there are reasons why it doesn't do that. But if you're fine with starting with clean profiles like I am, then blow out all the old versions, please.
Yeah. Our Loch Ness Gaming has got to run. Good night there, Loch Ness, and have yourself a great weekend, buddy. Thanks for coming by.
Thanks for dropping in.
Robert 954. I get major stringing with white PLA. All other colors work fine. Hot end is at 185C. Do you want to tackle this, or should I?
Sure. Let's start off with the simple argument. No filament, even roll to roll from the same batch, is the same. So the fact you're having no issues with the other ones, that's great. Now, the white PLA, it might have a different ingredient set. It might not have as many color additives in it, so it might change the composition. So if you are comfortable with dropping your temperature and you want to see if it clogs or not, go with that. Otherwise, you want to work more on your extrusion and enable features such as coasting to clean out the nozzle before it goes on to the next move. And that will help. But again, it comes down to filament roll by roll. Unfortunately, you may want to actually look into saving a separate profile within Cura for this filament, so you don't end up having to remember all those settings you change every time.
My experience has always been that when you print with white PLA or white ABS or white Petg, you always have to bring the temperature up a little bit. For some reason, we just need to use a little bit more heat. So maybe go up to 195, 190. Hey, we got one of those.
Super chat.
Thank you to Spartan Props. Just to hear Brian say it.
Super chat.
I actually got the real button back, so Brian doesn't.
Super chat.
Well, you know, I'm sorry. I will maybe catch up on this to everybody who wasn't there. People were paying a lot of super chats for me just to say it that weekend, and I'm not going to complain. I don't know what term you can use on a chat for lady of the evening, but I will do a lot of things for money.
All right.
I think that's the safest thing I can say.
So, although we have the whole family watching over at Spartan Props, everybody's watching.
Yeah, this is what I'm not invited for the after barbecue. I know.
No pressure. No pressure.
Sorry, I'm probably peeking out a little bit here. I haven't adjusted this mic yet. There we go. That's probably a bit better for you guys.
Dominic Versetto is saying, is there a way to get Prusa slicer supports to release as easily as tree supports in Cura? Yes, there is. You have to increase that space between where the support ends and the model begins. It's a very tight kind of window in there, and it's usually about a 1/2 mil. Maybe you just want to increase that to about 3/4 of a mil, and it should release a little bit easier. You might end up with a little bit more scarring, though.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a fair balance, about how clean you want your under supports. The perfect method is, of course, to have a dual extruder with PVA in there that can actually fill all that in for you on that dense infill. Actually, I don't even know if Prusa Slicer has a dense infill option. I know Cura has it, and I know Simplify 3D has it, but
I think it has it as well.
So you can optionally increase that air gap, but also increase the density of the last 3 layers for supports, which will cause your print to have a better finish, and at the same time make it a little bit easier to release.
Shaka Ripper, that's a cool name. I just got to say that. Shaka Ripper. Hi, thanks for the help. My Lowellsbot Mini V1 glass build plate stopped heating up. I've checked all connections, fuses, but it's still not heating up anymore. So that tells me that you have one of 2 problems: a connection issue to the heated bed, or your MOSFET's gone on the board.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know what a MOSFET is, I'll see if we can get it here on the camera.
Let me cut
to you. Is it going to be a little too dark? Let's pull this light around so we can maybe see it a bit better here. Okay, come on. Work with me. So your MOSFET hiding right up here. Oops, going too far. These little guys down here. Let's see if come on, focus for me. This technology is not working for me tonight. Thanks. Anyways, there's 2 little dies on your board that are MOSFETs, and a MOSFET is I always forget what the MOS part stands for, but FET is field effect transistor. It's just a switching device that allows you to use a small amount of power to control a large amount of power, like a relay, but fully solid state. If that fails, it can fail of one in 2 directions. Either it can fail completely saturated, which when you power on your printer, you're getting heat right away and you'll thermal runaway, hopefully, or it will catch fire. If it fails open or not saturated there, then at the end of the day, your printer's processor is going to be outputting power to that to say switch it on, and it's not going to do anything. So there's not a lot you can do to easily meter it. I would suggest take a multimeter and check against the ground, check both sides of the power contacts going out to your bed, and see if you're getting power there. If you are, then something's happened along your wire into your heated plate. If you're not getting anything there, unfortunately, it probably is going to result in a board replacement, unless you know of someone that's really good at SMD soldering and can order you the part from DigiKey. At the end of the day, it's probably just going to be cheaper to get a new motherboard.
So I've got an SKR V1.3 here. Maybe we can see it a little bit better there. Let me just go to my camera.
I redid this camera setup, and now the whole room's dark, so to look at. Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
So
right up Richard, here, see those 3 little areas right there? Those are your MOSFETs. I'm going to get my fat head out of the way.
And the 4th one there, actually, I think is the bed MOSFET. You'll notice it's quite a bit bigger. It supports a lot more power. So if you saw me talk on my last video about the E3 Mini 2.0, we talked a lot about MOSFETs. And in fact, that one right there, the 220CA, is the same one they put on the 2.0 boards. So that thing can do 220 amps.
There you go.
A lot of horsepower.
Now, there was a couple of questions I missed here.
Gary got for me. Metal oxide semiconductor field effect transistor. Say that one a few times over.
Parker Cooper says, I had to level my bed on the the E3 from the middle out. Is that normal? Absolutely not. You should be going from bottom left to top right, down to bottom right, to top left, back down to bottom left. Do that X pattern. You should not be doing that from the middle out. If you're doing it from the middle out, there's something else wrong. What I would say is your bed is probably warped. Be sure that you're doing this with a heated bed and a heated nozzle, and go from there. If you're still having problems, Parker, drop me an email and I will see if I can help you.
Yeah, I was just curious because it didn't say it in there as well too. Was it manual bed leveling or auto bed leveling? Because I believe what's that one that I always hate? Not bilinear, but what's the
UBL?
UBL? Yeah, the one that I can never get to work right. That one
Unified
does start
bed
in the
leveling.
center.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one starts in the center and works its way out. I've just never got it to work. So
High Tech Redneck says, I just upgraded to a new Marlin and added mesh leveling. It's so awesome. I can't believe I've gone without it for so long. I've always had low spot in the middle. Yeah, mesh leveling can certainly help that for sure.
yeah, that it does help, especially if you don't have a bed leveling sensor. A lot of people talk about having, just doing it with the screws, but the manual bed leveling feature, the mesh one, does allow you to cycle through points,
It sure
adjust
does.
it on the screen, and permanently add in any kind of bed offsets you've got in there. So it's a great feature.
We're getting a question about glue from High Tech Redneck. What glue do you guys use when needed? I use Weld-On 16 for PLA. I think it does a great job of PLA welding, and I don't have anything down here that's welded with it right at the moment. I also use super glue, both thin and medium. I never use really thick super glue. I also use epoxy, and the epoxy that we've been using around here, thanks to Brian actually, is the JB Weld for plastic epoxy. We used that to build if you guys remember, we built a dry box that you could actually pull lines from and pull your filament out of the dry box. That stuff worked great. It has not failed. We use 2 different types of plastic and it's still holding up. So
there we go. Oh, perfect.
let's get back to us. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Andrew Hart's asking, is good bridging achieved via targeted part cooling, or is the speed and flow rate so the bridge is taut when stretched across the gap the more important factor?
I would say
In my mind,
the latter.
the answer is both. Yeah, it is definitely the latter, but it is also a bit the former. There is a setting in Cura now for experimental bridge settings, and what it does is when it gets to those bridges, it slows down the speed, ramps your fans to 100%, and modifies the extrusion rate so that when it comes out of the nozzle, it's pre-curing, and it does depend on the material. So if you're doing PLA is actually quite a stringy and a viscous substance, so it tends to bind to itself, and you can get some real, I've seen like 20 centimeter long bridges successfully with it. The moment you go to a PETG, that's thrown right out the window. You simply cannot bridge nicely with PETG. It comes out in clumps, I find, or it comes out in blobs. It doesn't really string to itself, so there has to be a different technique when dealing with that.
Yeah, for sure. Sausage says, thinking of upgrading my bed heater to 24 volt from 12 volt to speed up the heating time. Can they handle it? It's an AB. Here's the problem.
A-net. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's the problem. When you're upgrading your bed to 24 volts, you now have to upgrade the rest of the system to 24 volts. Unless you're using completely separate power supply. If you decide to use a completely separate power supply, it's a totally different animal. But the bed itself will not, you can't just put 24 volts on that bed, you're going to fry it. Because right now, the way it's designed to be a 12 volt bed. Heated beds come in 2 varieties, either 12 volt or 24 volt, or the solder yourself variety. The solder yourself variety usually has enough pads, and there's instructions by the pads as how to wire them up and how much solder you have to put on them. So yeah, it's not an easy fix. The sausage, I wouldn't jump in and do that without having a little bit more knowledge. Okay.
If you're going to go down that route, get the AC heated bed and run it separately. A Kinovo or something like that. I did convert my entire CR-10S V2 from a 12 volt to a 24 volt system, and even with a 600 watt power supply, I'm saturating that. So I had to upgrade the power supply. I was browning out a bunch of stuff. If it's working right now but taking a bit of extra time, just remember, what I do is I preheat the bed and then I go work on slicing my files, because
I
it will
preheat
take
my
a
whole
while,
machine
but
before I do anything.
yeah.
There was another question here. Also, what do you guys think of is the best drop-in board from High Tech Redneck? I got to tell you, I don't think there's one best solution. They all come with certain levels of difficulty, depending on what machine you're going to be putting it in. I've always liked the MKS board. You guys might understand now. MKS is still an 8-bit board. They do have some 32-bit boards in the Robin line, but MKS has always been my go-to board. It wasn't until recently that I started going with these guys because of the price. Now, that price, as we all know, over the last year, has come with some caveats. These boards, I've heard of a lot of failures. I've had a couple of failures on these boards. Brian's had a couple of failures. But for the price of the board, you can't really complain. You just throw it out and get another one. But Big Tree Tech is also very good about sending you out a new board if your board is calved. So all you have to do is, because these come with a 1-year warranty, do they not? I'm pretty sure it's
I don't know. I think it's a 1-year warranty. Because bear in mind, I mean, I buy the E3 dips primarily. I am doing a review. You saw my review of the E3 Mini 2.0, and then I've actually got a 1.2 just going in right now to check it out and see how it compares to this. I liked this one because you could replace the steppers, and that's a twofold. I could smoke a stepper and replace it, but also if I somehow manage to blow one of these MOSFETs, this is a $20 board to replace. The cost to order this chip from DigiKey is going to be about $120 with $8 shipping plus my time. You tell me what's worth more. Yeah. So I swear by these E3 dips in all my Enders, including my Ender 5. I did find they're falling a bit behind for power when you're dealing with something bigger like a CR-10S with dual Z. But for those ones, I'm going with SKR 1.4 turbos and doing custom things with them. So honestly, I know there's a lot of the harping out there on Big Tree Tech, but if I start reading into the count of comments and how much they're actually selling, I think we're seeing like that 7 to 10% deficiency rate, which is kind of normal in the industry.
Yeah, and you're right.
Admittedly, on that. They are very responsive to any issues. As long as you have a valid thing, like I've talked with many of their employees and worked closely with them, and they've been asking me feedback on things I never thought I'd be queried on. So good on them, and I'll swear by these boards. I think they are as good as the MKS at half the price, and yes, they are using brand name parts. They're not using knockoffs.
Stephen Friend asks, do you use part cooling with Petg? Yes and no. I use a very small amount of part cooling. I think I'm only running my part cooling at about 10 or 20 to 30% on that fan. Just because if you don't have any part cooling, you can start to get droop because of the softness of the plastic. So just that little bit of part cooling helps it to adhere to the layer underneath and doesn't give you that over droop. It's like a bad cookie. When you take it out of the oven and you kind of put it on your hand, it starts to droop over the side of your hand, right? So if it's got too much margarine in it, it'll always stay soft. And that's kind of what is the problem with Petg. So a little bit of part cooling is good, depending on your environment, where you're printing. If you're in a cool room, I would say no part cooling. But if you're in a room that's fairly warm, like our printer room gets really warm, up to about 28 to 30 degrees. And I tested that today, actually. With just a couple of printers running, it gets up to about 30 degrees in that room. So I have part cooling on my Petg.
Just looking up the information for Sausage here. His question was, is there a setting in Marlin to slow down the timeout that returns you to the main menu? I find it's a bit of a bummer when bed leveling and the menu has reverted back to the info screen. Yes, there is a setting. I am trying to find it again. As far as I know, all it does is fully disable that timeout. So as long as you stay in those menus, it won't bounce back to the main screen. So as soon as I find that, I will let you know and type it out in the chat.
All right, so Antennas BC is asking, we print functional parts at work. What filament is good for tough, long-lasting parts? Is ABS still a thing? ABS certainly is still a thing. I would also recommend PETG. I would also recommend nylon or polycarbonate. Those are the if you want long-lasting wearable parts, or parts that won't wear out in short order, those are the ones that I would certainly use.
I just found the item for sausage. If you go into Configuration Advanced and look up the parameters called LCD Timeout to Status, and by default it's commented out. You can define the time in milliseconds there. So if you set to something disgustingly large, like 30 minutes, which you'll have to figure out what that is from, milliseconds over. That's not very fun. I think it's 180,000 might equate to that. So give this a try. I'll put it in the chat and let me know if it works for you guys.
Peter Reynolds is saying, can you tell me why I keep getting first layer warping and then the print fails? There's probably a couple of things going on there. One, your bed is not completely level. Even though you think it is, it may not be. Secondly, your heat bed may be too hot. And thirdly, your offset may be not set correctly as well. So those are things that I would check.
Your bed might be too cool.
And your bed might be too cool.
Yeah.
If you're printing PLA you can print without a heated bed.
I don't know. In my experience, PLA, if you're having their bed at 50 degrees, 45, it'll actually start to warp more. So either go for broke, go 60, 65 degrees, or don't even bother with it. That's my experience this week.
High Tech Redneck says, I'd prefer a 32-bit board for his Ender 3. Then I would go with keeping it simple and low cost, I would go with the Big Tree E3 dip with the 2208 stepper drivers.
Please buy the 1.1 board. I can't emphasize that enough. The 1.0 is fine, but it doesn't have enough internal storage to run a bunch of functions, including BL touches. So, it's a really complex issue I'm trying to sort out with them. Going forward, almost all their boards come with the RET6 variant chip, which has more than enough memory to store BL touch locations and have M122 debug for the TMC steppers, etc., etc. The main thing is get the latest board if you can. If you get the older one, you are going to have to make sacrifices on features, but it will still work.
There is another question here from BDW. In Cura, can you export profiles and materials, but there isn't an export option for printers? Is there a way to manually externally save the printer info? Not as far as I know. They used to have where you could export them out, but if you go into actually the printer profiles subfolder within Cura, you will find all the printer profiles in there, and the ones that you've created will be in there as well. And you can probably just pull those out and move them to another machine. It's a little bit of a back-end way of doing things, but it can be done.
There's a wonky way here. I'm just looking into it. I know one of the files here is in C drive users, username, app data, local, Cura, 4.6 cache, definitions, 4.6.1. That's where they hide some of the profiles, but they did. I thought there was a plugin. I'll see. There used to be a plugin to be able to import and export printer profiles easily.
I don't know if it's still available. I haven't used it anyway. Lip Service
I haven't been on the marketplace in a while.
How can set the max hot end temp higher on the CR-10S with factory firmware and a microswiss hot end? It's actually quite easy. First, what you want to do is you actually want to download the source code from Creality. Okay, when you go down and see the max temperatures that they're all set at, you'll see that the hot end is set for 275, but a little bit lower than that, there's another line that says that it will never reach 275 because there's a 10 degree buffer, a minus 10 degree buffer. So it'll only go up as high as 265. So if you crank that up from 275 to 300, it'll go to 290. Okay?
I think it was 285. Yeah, it's something like a 15-degree deadband. Now, bearing in mind, when you're getting up to that temperature range, I'd have to look into the thermistors being used, but
Yeah.
you're going to start getting inaccurate temperatures at those maximum ranges. I assume is the only reason you want to get it that high to be able to torque up your nozzle real good, or are you looking at
Yeah.
printing some ultra high temp materials? Let us know.
Yeah, let us know. Mr. Trombley, question. How do you set first layer height and first layer width? Depending on what you're doing, if you're using your slicer to do so, I always set my first layer height to a millimeter above what my overall print is going to be. So if I'm printing at 2.2 millimeter layer height, I will set my very first layer to 0.3, and you can do that in Cura. It's very easy. And then as far as the width goes, I go 105%. So 105%. It's at 100%. Then I just change it on the first layer to 105. It gives me a little bit of an elephant's foot. Not a whole lot of, it's not going to ruin the print in any way, shape, or form, but it does allow for that first layer to lay down and grab the bed really, really good.
Yeah, I'm just going to crop it in on my shot here. Hopefully this works for you guys. You can kind of half see it.
Let me open this up for you. There you go.
Inside Cura here, all I've done is to reveal those settings. I click on the little gear beside quality. And then if we look at the window that is brought up, the settings visibility, you can see I've checked off layer height, initial layer height, line width, and initial layer width. So these are normally linked and they're calculated. But if you want to make let's say you want to make your model 0.12 layer height, but you want that first layer to still be 0.2, you can keep it here as 0.2. Now the line width is a percentage relative to your main line width. So some slicers will go and bump this to, I think it's a 10% boost, which would be 0.66 for a 0.6 nozzle, or a 20% boost, which is 0.72. But regardless, that layer line width, the initial one below it, is a percentage of the line width setting here. So if you're at 0.6 and you want to make that first layer 10% wider, we put 110% here. And that's all you got to do.
Yeah, and I usually only go 5%, to be honest with you, and that's all I ever need.
Yeah, 110 is a bit much, honestly. You're going to start getting line gaps in there. But I've done some ones where I've made the line width much wider.
Mm-hmm.
Have I also increased the flow too, just to kind of help with that bed adhesion? But at the end of the day, those were resolved with other techniques.
Super chat.
Hey, Sausage gave us a $5 super chat. He says, with thanks for the best live Q&A channel on YouTube. Thank you very much for those kind words as well.
Appreciate it. I mean, it wouldn't be a Q&A without us turning around and saying, hey, thanks for your question. See ya.
Yeah.
And I'll give this one to you as a freebie. Super chat.
How do you stop stringing on small prints, Brian Smith? Well, let me tell you, how do you stop stringing? It's going to have to do with your speed, your temperature, and your retraction. Those are the three major things that play a big part in stringing. And it also depends on what material you're using. If you're using PLA and your PLA is stringing, that's a good indication that you've got too much moisture in your PLA. So I would go ahead and try and dry out that PLA, put it into a bucket with some Desiccant for a few days, and let that moisture wick its way out and into the Desiccant. Other than that, you're going to have to reduce your retraction a little bit, increase your retraction a little bit, slow down your machine a little bit, and increase your heat just ever so slightly.
And sadly, I have not seen this new, I think it's eSun has made this new filament dryer.
Mm-hmm.
The one that's super cheap. That's like $34.
Yeah.
I can't remember who was making that. I'll have to look it up again, but that might be a good option if you are working with those filaments that are a bit more tricky with dryness requirements.
There you go.
Now I'm trying to find it. I honestly can't remember which one that was. They're promoting it for $38 US, and I definitely want to get my hands on one to try it out.
Scarecrow, thank you very much. give these guys a thumbs up, he says, for all the knowledge they have. Well, we got this knowledge by doing exactly what you guys are doing right now. And this is why when we started this channel almost 3 years ago now, we said that we wanted to cater to those people that were getting started in 3D printing and are still having problems and trying to work through all the difficulties that you're going to have. So we really dedicated our time to learning, and we wanted you guys to be able to, and anybody new coming to the channel, to be able to go ahead and get some fresh information from our perspective, because we've done what you guys are doing.
Yes, we have definitely done a lot. And we've been through a few machines and all that, so we've had a lot of fun.
Yeah, eSun's got one on Kickstarter. It's on Kickstarter. They've got one on Kickstarter. There's another company that will be releasing a new filament dryer. I can't tell you too much about it because I don't have all the details, and when I do get the details, I'm probably going to be under NDA. But what I do know is that it's going to be a multi-filament dryer, so you'll be able to put more than one roll into it, which is something that we haven't seen for a while, at a very good price. Andrew Hart says, I have zero stringing with a 3.5 millimeter retraction distance at 70 millimeters per second retraction speed. That's actually great. Try that. That should work.
It varies nozzle to nozzle. If you are sticking with, basically, if you have a hot end that's not all metal and your PFTE liner goes all the way down to the nozzle, your retraction should be at a minimum 5 millimeters, no higher than 10. I think 6.5 is what Cura pushes by default. Now, if you have an all metal hot end, everything changes. Now you don't want to do nearly as much retraction. So even with a volcano nozzle, I limit my retractions to 2 millimeters.
Sorry, I just had to go out of shot here for a minute. Now, there was some question about TPU stringing. I hear, and this comes from Mike Kirk Jr., he says, what about stringing with TPU? I hear keep retraction off, then I hear around 2, then some say crank retraction up to 9 or 10 in Cura. I'll tell you, my retraction for TPU is set to 0. I do not have any retraction on TPU. I still get stringing, and that's the nature of the plastic. You're never going to get a completely clean print with TPU. You are going to have to do some cleanup, and we can see here, maybe here, you see there's some little wisps right there at the very top of this wheel. This is TPU, and that was retraction from the start and stop locations as it moved to another location on the bed. And at the end of the day, it's really easy to take off. You just take your hobby knife and just take it off, or take a little bit of sandpaper and sand it down, and it will go right away. And you'll never even know that it was there. Hello?
Yeah, you pretty much nailed it. I mean, yeah, I got you.
Okay.
I was just reading into the Sunlu Fila Dryer. Yeah, I think that's the one that's cheaper now. On Kickstarter, you can get it pre-order price for USD $40.99. I think the flash sale one, which was, yeah, $35.99. Reward no longer available. There was one backer. So I'm guessing that was just like a single one at cost. But it doesn't look like a bad little unit. I might consider it depending on which machine I want to run it on.
So Scarecrow's asking, what was that board again with the MOSFETs? That was the Big Tree SKR E3 dip, if you're going to be putting it into a Creality Ender 3. Get the version 1.1 or 1.4.
Oh, hang on. Which one are we talking about? Are we talking about the dips?
The dips.
Dip 1.1.
Dip is the 1.1. There you go.
I can just throw these boards around because you get so many of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dip is 1.1. The SKR line, because I didn't realize until last week, they use the SKR name on the E3s as well. So when I refer to an SKR board, I'm talking about the LPC 1768 and 1769 ones, which are the larger boards that will not drop in replacement into the Crealities. When I'm talking about the E3 line, there's the Mini, which comes with the steppers built into the board, and the Dip, which basically stands for dual inline package. It's what these pins are.
Yep.
That allows you to replace the steppers. So for the Dip, it is currently version 1.1. For the E3 Mini, it's currently version 2.0. And for the SKR, you have the 1.4 and the 1.4 Turbo, which are identical boards, except the 1.4 Turbo runs 20 megahertz faster with a slightly faster chip.
Trevor Rickard says he's trying to find out why his Cura does not show infill in the preview. That could be a couple of reasons. What type of PC or laptop are you using? You may not have enough computing power for it to actually show that. Secondly, there might be something wrong with the install. So those are two things that I would check.
I'm just going to check mine. There are some settings you can play with as well on Cura. Actually, I'm guessing this fan mount. I'll slice this to show you guys here. So when you slice up something real quick here and you go to your preview, this is something that I don't think I think we kind of covered it once in a video, but when you have your base model here, there are ways to view that based off the color scheme. And so there are things that can be turned off, such as which extruder you're using, if there's travels, seeing those moves, etc. There's also the line type feature. Now this one is the one that we like to use often because this will show you what each of the lines are. And based off this, you can turn off and say, in my preview, I don't want to see any of my travels anymore, and I don't want to see any of my infill. And then based off that, you can still see a preview of your model and see how it's going to go on the inside, but it's not showing you any of that internal material. Even the supports, in this case, the trees, are they're actually transparent now, so you can see through the model. But you can turn them off altogether if you don't want to see. If you just want to see how your model is going to be composed at the end of your print. And so, of course, if infill is unchecked here, you're not going to see your infill pattern. So just have a look at those settings and let us know.
Yeah, definitely. Johnny 5, Mechanic Repair. I think I know who this is. He wants to touch my rocket. I think I know who that is.
I wonder who. I wonder
who.
Peter Sandy, using Cura 4.6.1 and slicing with 240 print temp, but my models are printing at 235. Where would I begin to look for other temperature settings? Well, actually, I'm going to bounce right back to that Cura window since I got it here. Stand by. Where is it hiding? There it's hiding. So when you look at your material temperatures in Cura, by default, it only exposes a couple of temperatures. If we go to the gear beside material, you actually have all the other parameters that are supposed to be basically calculated back to that. So if we add all these different material items here, we can see that everything is set to 200. So if you set your printing temperature to 240, it should auto-calculate to 240. Now, anytime that it's not, you've broken Cura's calculations, if you will, and it's not a cascade calculation, you're going to get this little FX, which says, this setting is normally calculated, but it currently has an absolute value set. Click to restore the calculated value. And that's what the little bounce back is. If you click that, it's going to revert to its default settings. But we can see here, even final printing temperature is not linked right now. So although we reverted our calculations, we kept 240. So if you're starting to get comfortable with Cura and you're okay with it, I personally go into the gear and I turn on every setting possible in Cura just to cover my bases so I can see every single parameter. And we can see here for our temperatures, we've only got the 4 set points here. Printing temperature, initial layer, initial printing temperature, and final printing temperature. These last two I don't use very often, but initial layer one, sometimes I'll bump that a little bit higher so that it will help bind the material better to your bed. And then I'll drop the temperature by maybe 5 degrees for the next layers going on. As number one, they'll be thinner, and number two, it just runs better at a lower temperature. But for that first layer, I do bump it up. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of a better picture into those settings. Let us know if you're finding they're all the same and it's still dipping, because I think it was in the default profiles, it did auto dip by 5 degrees.
Oh, hang on.
Oh, and I see Trevor Rickard here saying, looks like it was the infill was unchecked. I'm glad that was what it was.
Okay. I'm going to answer the next question that came up here, and it was from Trevor Rickard. He said, or not Trevor Rickard, High Tech Redneck, I'm sorry. Looks like there's a few options for the drivers on the E3 dip. Let me just change to that screen for you. There we are. Oh, that's you.
Now we're sharing desktops here.
Yeah, there we go. That's what I wanted. All right, so if you're looking at this on their website, there is a couple of different options that you can get. You can get it with, you can get it like this, which you can get the monitor with, what stepper drivers are they putting on here? No stepper drivers. You can get
that kit, by default, I think they ship with TMC 2208s if you get it with steppers.
Okay.
If we scroll to the top, I think there's a drop down for the kit options for drivers up there. I saw it
there
right
we go.
there. So
E3 dip without drivers. Yeah. So I normally would go with the 2208s with the UARTs. It would be $32 for you if you're going to do that. You can go to the 2209s, I believe. They've got a 2209 in there, but they don't have a 2209 with UART. I think UART's built into that, though, is it not? On the 2209s?
I think the 2209s are SPI based. And,
yes, that's right.
And SPI, we could get into it, but at the end of the day, UART and SPI, for the sake of an end user, is practically identical. It's more electrical properties for that. There are also the 5160s, but number one, you don't need a 5160.
No, that's for sure.
Those steppers are on average $20 to $25 a pop because they can drive 5 amps of current per channel, and that's equivalent to setting your VREF basically to 5,000. I do like 2209s for the slightly higher power capacity. I think if I discussed it briefly again in my last video there about the E3 Mini 2.0, but the 1.6, I'm sorry, I'm getting all my voltages messed up here. The 2209 can drive 2 amps of current, which is more power than any stepper on a Creality machine I've seen can take. Whereas the 2208s do, I believe, 1.4 to 1.6, which again is more than sufficient.
Yeah.
Why do you go to an overscaled stepper? Number one, the moment you get an overscaled stepper like the 5160, you no longer need cooling because they're so efficient at the lower voltages. It just uses ambient air cooling. But it's a high price to pay just to get a passive cooling.
Yeah.
If you stick with the 2208s, if you start bumping the power to the upper ends, you can potentially overwhelm the chip because a lot of these Creality boards are not set up to directly path air onto those steppers. It's meant more to circulate the ambience in there. And so when you're doing your machine, for instance, if you're doing a CR-10S or anything bigger that has a dual Z, you need a chip that actually can drive a lot of power, but at the same time, you need to make sure that chip is also capable of being cooled or you will have overheating issues.
There you go. Pete Sandy says, I have all settings turned on too. They're all at 240. So there might be something else going on there.
There is something, I want to say in firmware I've seen it before. I honestly cannot recall. I'll take a quick look and see if something pops up.
Okay, I'm going to answer Stephen Friend's question. He says, I have an Ender 3 Pro and normally use Simplify 3D and want to try Cura to try some of the different infill options. Why am I not able to use the full bed size in Cura when I have to set the 235 to 235? The reason is because Cura automatically gives you a safety zone. It automatically says, okay, it's not going to go outside of this. If you've got it set to 235, it's only going to go to 210. Because it has that safety zone, it doesn't want to go off the bed. It doesn't want to print in an area that may cause your print to fail. That is why.
And it also it has to do with the slicer.
Yes.
Actually, I'll see if I can show you this this setting because it may make a bit more sense. Where are we here at? Tonight you're getting your Cura lessons here. So we can see on my giant 10S5, I still have that exterior boundary. And what the reason for that is, let's say I decide to blow up this model super big. We're going to make this thing What was it, like 482? You see how it says we can't print it? I'll show you why. If we scale this down just slightly within the boundaries and we do a slice, I'm going to turn off my tree supports, otherwise we'll be waiting here for an hour. But the reason for that boundary there is because we have a setting enabled. And while I slice this, I'll give you guys a moment to think about what setting might prevent that. This is actually too big for Cura. Cura is crashing. So if I slice it now, there we go. Yeah, Cura Engine does not like things when they're really, really big. So if we go and slice this up, and we take a look at our preview, let me know in the chat what you guys see that's different from when we placed the model on the bed. Actually, in this case, it's not actually doing it. In the few times I've dealt with this, that boundary is because of a feature for a brim or for a skirt to go around the model.
That's exactly what it is.
And so that's the safe zone for that. So if we go to build plate adhesion, oh, I do have a skirt. It's just very tiny. If I go to none, that boundary goes away, if you guys see. But if I enable the skirt again, and we see we have 3 layers, it gave a safe buffer zone. If I increase that line count, or if I increase the skirt distance to, let's say, 30, now all of a sudden my region's gotten way smaller. And so this is what restricts you on your slicer, is this is trying to tell you that with this setting, your print can only get to be yay big. And you know what it is? I think on my preview here was I probably turned off those line features again on you guys. So this should show you that if we add the skirt on, we're going to see on the outside, it goes almost all the way out to the actual maximum size of the build plate. So if we slice this up and we go to line type, yeah, that's why I cut off all the helpers. So now if we look at our skirt is almost to the bed, but it's within that exclusion zone. And so that's just the slicer protecting you. So if you want to get the full build plate size, either go for a raft, which will gain you a little extra space, or go for none. And if you go for none, you'll be able to build that model right up to the edge of your maximum build plate.
All right, we're at 8 o'clock, and we've got one more question before we wrap it up tonight. Jaden Davis is saying, what's the approximate size of your rocket?
I can't say that.
Well, I can, because it is 1,075 millimeters. So it's a little over a meter long. And it is roughly about 2.6 inches wide. And that is what it's going to be. And we've shown some pictures of it over on our Facebook group, and we really are pushing forward to getting this done. You can see here we've got the paper tubes for the one that we are going to be putting up against it. This one's actually got a coupler in the middle to adjoin these two, but they will be, they'll look identical when they're done. And you shouldn't be able to tell which is the 3D printed one over the one that is not 3D printed. So with that said, guys and gals, thank you for joining us tonight on Saturday. We hope we answered all your questions. If you got something out of tonight, hit that like button, give us a thumbs up. Leave your comments down in the description below, or in the comment section below. And until we see you guys on Wednesday, Brian's got an episode coming out on Wednesday.
I do.
And we won't tell you what it is because we're going to leave it for a surprise, which gives me a week off. And my next video coming out for you guys is the toy DIY 4-in-1 printer. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a couple weeks. Okay, until that time, we will see you guys on Wednesday for a new episode. And we'll see you next Saturday night at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And until we see you then, Mark. Why did I call you Mark?
I don't
Brian?
know. You've been seeing him more than me.
Yeah. Brian?
Yes. That's my name.
Joe M. says he asked
again,
a question on email. Let me quickly cover this. Joe M. asked a question on email and never had a reply a month ago. What was that question? Send it to this address right here. Let me just pull it up.
Technical emails, issues with the email, and it applied to everybody, including vendors we were working with. So it might have gotten lost in there. Please resend it again.
if you send it to questions@thefirstlayer.com, chances are we're going to see it. We will see it because that is a separate email strictly for questions. If you send questions to me directly, chances are I'm going to miss it amongst the hundreds of emails I get every day from different sources. I may miss it, so I do apologize that we missed it for you, Joe. And send it to questions@thefirstlayer.com, and we will get that answered for you. Sorry again for that problem. So, with that said, it's after 8. I want to go up and watch a movie and have some popcorn, because that's what I like to do on a Saturday night. And drink a little bit of Pepsi-Cola or Coca-Cola in my case. I like Coca-Cola. And we will see you guys here next Saturday. Remember that the First Layer is always your foundation to a great print.
See ya.